This video is healthcare reform. And what this comes out of is I was talking with one of my colleagues recently, and what they said was they're stuck. They said if they try to actually help the patient, they can't meet their productivity requirements. So they have to screw over the patient in order to meet their numbers. And let me explain what that means. What it means is hospitals tend to run like businesses. There was this idea, of, well, we'll make hospitals efficient like a factory. We'll take all these factory ideas, Toyota, Japan car makers, and we'll put them into how we run a hospital, and it'll be more efficient, it'll be better. And what it turns out is they run hospitals like assembly lines. How can we get the patients through, in and out as fast as possible so we can generate more billing codes, because that's how you get more money. But one of the things you'll see in the modern hospital, no one is keeping track of cures. Does the patient get better or not? That is considered irrelevant. Patients think, oh, I'm going to get modern healthcare, the best that science can offer. They don't understand. No one cares if they get better. The patient's irrelevant. The patient's just a stupid chump that gives us money, okay? What matters is the billing code generated as fast as possible, because that's where the money comes from. As long as you follow the standard of care, it doesn't matter what happens to the patient. If they all die, no one's going to keep track anyways. As long as you generate the billing code, you get paid. Okay, this is a very important point because that's how the hospital runs. And because no one keeps track of cures, you can't compare a hospital based on cures. If you compared based on cures, someone would come along with a low-fat vegan diet and start curing patients all over the place like Kempner, and that would embarrass the other drug dealers, so they would look bad. Therefore, they're never going to allow comparison to be made based on cure. Okay, and remember we talked about McDougall tried to get the insurance companies to pay for a vegan diet for treatment of cardiac disease, but the insurance companies want to know part of it, because the more the patients have to pay, the higher their premiums, the more expensive the tests are, like stents and open heart, the more money they make. Now, I know that Dr. Ornish was making some inroads, but I haven't heard about that being too widely used or available. I don't know the current status of that, but I can assure you, I know tons of doctors, and I don't know a single one that knows the low-fat vegan diet. I know a few that are beginning to learn about it, but it's a rare individual that even wants to learn about it. Okay, and the other thing I would tell you is the only thing that can save healthcare is Christianity. Christian ethics. People don't have to be Christians, but they have to have Christian ethics. And this is very obvious because, you talk to a lot of stupid people who don't have any experience, and they're going to think, oh, atheism is better for science. Get the religion out of science. That's not true. Atheistic Darwinism is a religion. It's not based on science. As I was an A+ student in evolutionary biology at Stanford, I know this stuff quite well, and all the arguments for origin of life, origin of the universe, all that stuff. And we're not going to get into all that right now, but the point is simply that Christianity says, beginning of the Bible, man is created in the image of God, therefore he is part divine, and therefore there is something special and unique about him in comparison with the other animals, and he deserves our best effort. As Christ had said on the Sermon on the Mount, that which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. So you should treat the individual person well. Like Ayn Rand had said, if you grant individual rights, you grant, all the others will follow. And what I'm trying to say is people think atheistic Darwinism is okay. It is not. It is not scientific, and it is not okay. What it says is the patient is just a talking ape, a monkey. We have no obligation to him whatsoever other than the standard of care. And then it just pretends that the standard of care means the best care. It does not mean that at all. What it means is some lowest common denominator that we can offer to intoxicated people, to drunk people, to demented people, people who can't do anything. And it's true that there's a lot of patients like that. However, we don't distinguish between standard of care and optimal care. Optimal care is not even considered because it often means that the patient must do something for themselves. And the feeling is that the patients are so stupid, lazy, and hopeless that they could never do anything for themselves. So in a sense, what they're getting is animal medicine. They're getting treated like stupid animals. You can take a pill and force an animal to eat it. You can't have a conversation with an animal and tell it, okay, you need to improve your diet. Here's how you improve your diet. This is why you're doing this. Here's how you need to exercise, change your sleep habits, and all these other things. Okay, you can't do that. So this conversational, educational empowerment, that's actually a much more sophisticated level of healthcare than is all this drugs and surgery stuff, which could be done to an animal, all right? Because the money is just so extraordinary. Like open heart surgery bills $150,000, $200,000. Stents, $30,000 a piece. Versus, teach somebody the vegan diet for prevention of coronary artery disease or reversal. You're lucky if you get any money at all. Maybe bring them in for a week and get $1,000. Okay, and that's an important point because patients really have almost no say whatsoever in the healthcare system because they have no money, so they have no voice. Voice comes from money pushing down. The big drug companies, the big insurance companies, they pay off the researchers at the big name medical centers to publish standards of care that sell their drug. And that's why AI is going to be a joke too, because it's going to be written by them to sell the same drugs. Okay, we also know what works. It's not rocket science. The way you make money in medicine is sell drugs, sell imaging tests, sell lab tests, diagnostic procedures like colonoscopy, mammography, and then surgical devices and stuff, pacemakers, all that stuff, artificial hip, artificial knees. Okay, we know from Kempner, going way back to the 1930s and 40s, all you got to do is feed these patients a vegan diet, and we could do better than Kempner did on education. Kempner was magnificent in getting compliance when the patients were out there in Durham, but we could teach them a lot more so they could go home and know what to do. You could even do it through telehealth. A lot of colleges are going to go out of business with all the way prices are in the poor economy. You could run one of these out of a university, okay? If somebody would make a movie about Kempner's life, we could take the funding from the movie about Kempner's life and use it to build one of these clinics. People ask me, well, why don't I do it? And I'm like, I work full time. Also, I'm a scholar. I'm a clinical doctor and a scholar. I am not a businessman. I'm not social at all. I didn't even have a cell phone for like 11 years. Okay, I'm the last guy in the world to be social about anything. Also, you need an entrepreneur. You need somebody that calls patients. You need somebody who sets everything up, who arranges financing. I'm just good for, teaching and talking to patients, but somebody else has got to do all the rest of it. You need somebody to fund it, somebody who wants this to happen. Now, on a smaller scale, there's places like True North where they do this, sort of a legacy continuation of Kempner's work, but this could be done at all these abandoned colleges. This could be done in more locations. It would be a great thing if somebody would do it, and if somebody would do it and do it right to really help the patients, and not turn it into some high-fat phony nonsense where they're feeding them avocados and nuts and seeds and all this high-fat food and, omega-3s and all this other soy, all this other flax BS. Because I have a feeling that's what it'll turn into if it's taken over by anybody commercial. It has to be by people who really want to go by results, so you can publish the results, and the results would be fantastic. But the only thing that can the reason why I go into this Christian ethics is you have to put the patient, like a parent loves their child and wants to do what's right for the child regardless of the money. That's what you have to have, because otherwise the money's too big. And a lot of people tell me, well, our healthcare is one of the best in the world. Oh, BS. We have the highest healthcare costs, and we have terrible outcomes. People don't understand. Most patients have bad outcomes. Tons and tons of stuff in clinical medicine is fake. Look at the psychiatric drugs. They all cause a lobotomy, either quickly or slowly. The antipsychotics cause quick lobotomies. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors cause slow lobotomies. But that's a joke, selling amphetamines to children in grade schools. That's a joke. Castrating children and calling it gender affirming. It's an outrage. It's a disgrace. It's an abandonment of morality. It's evil made medical assistants in dying. They're encouraging children to commit suicide. This is insane. This is so crazy and debauched and evil. This is what you get with atheistic Darwinism, because atheistic Darwinism, it runs on hatred. People don't understand that, but the people at the top that run the medical system, they hate the patients. You have to hate the patients if you're going to sell drugs, toxic poison drugs to children, okay? You have to hate them, because a regular person would say, I wouldn't poison a child. They wouldn't do it knowingly or willingly, but they're too stupid to realize that's what's happening when you give amphetamines to attention deficit kids, okay? And then when you start to really understand pharmacology at a higher level, you realize so many drugs don't work, and they're really just, worse than a placebo because they got side effects. Anyways, that's the only thing that can make it better. That will never be allowed by the higher-ups because they would lose money. They're not going to allow something that makes them lose money. But that's why healthcare cannot be reformed. And anybody who thinks otherwise, they're just, either an ignoramus or a liar. I've been in healthcare ever since I was a kid. My father's a doctor. I got tons and tons of doctors in the family. So I got lots of experience seeing healthcare from all the different perspectives in the best universities, Harvard, Stanford, Northwestern, you name it. And I can tell you, it cannot be fixed. The money pushing, get more money, faster, more billing codes, that's unstoppable. It's never going to stop. So this is the only thing that can make it good. So something on a small scale could work, but it is what it is. And somebody with big money has to fund this. I haven't seen anybody coming out willing to do this. But that's what it takes for anybody knows anybody who would want to fund this. Maybe one of these rich old guys, Sylvester Stallone, he's got a lot of money, close to retirement. Maybe he'd want to fund a clinic like this, or somebody like that, some sort of heroic, noble masculinity type guy, Chuck Norris or something, the good old, heroic Hollywood guys. They used to exist. Nowadays, Hollywood's all, destroyed. Anyways, there it is.